Hey guys, I'm back here on the Film Scene Investigation channel. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Well, it's a new week and I have a new review. Today, I will be taking a look at the 1989 drama In Country. Just before we get into the review, guys, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. All the support is greatly appreciated. So, In Country from September 1989 was a movie that was directed by the filmmaker Norman Jewison and was based on the novel by the author Bobby Ann Mason. Filmed on location in the state of Kentucky, this movie cost around about $18 million to produce, but unfortunately didn't recoup that. I think ultimately it made around about $4 or $5 million. As for the story, it's centered around a girl called Sam, a newly graduated student who was played by actress Emily Lloyd. She was a very outgoing individual who had a close relationship with her uncle, a guy called Emmett, who was played by actor Bruce Willis. He was a Vietnam War veteran who suffered from PTSD thanks to his involvement in the war. And he wasn't the only one that was deployed. His brother, Sam's father, also went to Vietnam, but unfortunately for him, he never came home. One day, we saw Sam come across a box filled with old letters and photos of her father, and this sparked Sam's curiosity. She had never known her dad, but she wanted to. She wanted to know more about him and what he was like, and so she started pressing her uncle for information. And yeah, of course, I mean, it makes total sense that someone would want to find out more about their biological parents. A lot of time we see people that are adopted and seek that information out when they, get older. And so Sam was no different in that. Because Sam's mother, Irene, wasn't around, Emmett seemed like the best person to ask. And so she did. But unfortunately for her, Emmett was very, very reluctant to talk about the war and express his, thoughts and opinions on it. He was a deeply scarred individual. I mean, he had some deep personal trauma, and for him to talk about it, in his head, that wouldn't help. For him, he wanted to suppress everything and pretend like everything was fine. Sam, of course, still pressed him for any little bit of information she could get out of him. But Emmett was tight-lipped. I mean, he just didn't want to drag up old memories. As the story unfolded, Sam continued in her pursuit to discover more about her dad. She read all of the letters that she could find, she saw the photos, and started forming an opinion about who he was and what he was like. Sam ended up visiting her grandparents, and this is where she was given some old private diaries of her father's. Diaries that contained personal and private thoughts of his. And this, of course, would give her a better understanding of who he was. You see, the grandma, she knew that Sam wanted to, know as much as possible. And by sharing, the journals, the diaries, well, that was her way of trying to help. Emmett, on the other hand, was falling deeper and deeper into depression, heavily drinking and generally not taking care of himself. You see, he hadn't come to terms with the issues that he had regarding the war. He didn't have the mental fortitude to really cope with that, and with that, as I said, he just wanted to pretend that everything was fine. Of course, to everyone else, they knew he was suffering. Let's talk about the film's ending. as the story culminated with Emmett, Sam, and Sam's grandmother all visiting the war memorial in Washington, D.C. This gave everyone a chance to, pay their respects and find some sort of closure. Now, on paper, the idea of ending your film with the characters simply visiting a memorial and paying their respects, it doesn't sound exactly riveting. But honestly, I was very impressed with how everything turned out. It really was a bittersweet moment to see all of the family members take it in turns to touch the dad's engraving on the wall. Just from seeing the characters' faces, it meant so much to them. And that's why it was so powerful. Watching it all play out, I will admit, I definitely felt some sadness, especially when we saw the shot of Sam's graduation photo. That really did pull on the heartstrings, And I think that's because he was a soldier that never got to see his daughter grow up. That aspect, that had never really entered my mind. And it was very touching. And also the idea of Sam, a young woman who never knew her father, but still wanted to, make him proud of, who she was. And that was heartbreaking. So after watching In Country, one of the first thoughts that popped into my head was that a film like this just wouldn't be made today. Given the current landscape of Hollywood, patriotism is generally frowned upon by studio executives. In their warped minds, the American flag is something not to be celebrated. But you see, when I watched In Country, for me, it really embodied Americana, that idea of what an American is. The land of the free, the home of the brave, absolutely. And so when you have that and you take that and put that into 21st century Hollywood, it's just not going to fly, is it? It's just not going to happen. You see, if there were to be a remake of In Country, I'd hate to see what it would end up looking like. I'm sure some DEI hires would be involved, let alone just, I'm sure, a very negative outlook on America in general. Back in the 80s, the world was very different, and filmmakers had less restrictions and regulations to follow. Filmmakers could actually go out and make actual movies that resonated with a general audience. And unfortunately, over the years, that has been lost. Nowadays, it's all about the numbers, how much money can we make, everything's commodified, everything's a franchise. And just the kind of the heart and soul of Hollywood, if there ever was one, has been, truly ripped out. Technically, In Country was a very well-made movie that really captured that spirit of middle America in the 1980s. The cinematographer, Russell Boyd, used the Kentucky landscapes to his advantage, using a number of wide establishing shots that, really look beautiful on screen. As for the music, the late composer, James Horner, delivered a very sweeping and melodramatic score that I actually really enjoyed. I'm going to be honest, I'm not one for these kind of big cinematic scores, but honestly, I thought Horner's work really suited the vibe and tone, that patriotic vibe that the film was going for. Prior to this, James Horner had just produced the score to the film Field of Dreams from 1988. So, yeah, absolutely, he was the right guy, perfectly suited for the job. When it comes to the performances, Emily Lloyd was absolutely fantastic in this film. And given the limited acting experience that she had at the time, it was even more impressive. She held it all together, she really did. And even though her co-star Bruce Willis got top billing, make no mistake, this is Emily Lloyd's movie. Now, the actress is from England, and that really did surprise me because her Southern American accent, it sounded so authentic. It really did. And yeah, I thought she was American. She really did embody that all-American 1980s teenager. And like most teenagers, she was very impulsive, wanting to know the truth about her father. And that too was very authentic. The Sam character was very endearing, with her inquisitive nature and positive attitude. And when you think about the subject matter, this film could have been very depressing. And, don't get me wrong, there are moments of that. But generally speaking, just from the way that the actress Emily Lloyd was on screen, she brought this certain energy, certain charisma about her. Overall, there was kind of a layer of hopefulness surrounding the whole film. I had no idea who Emily Lloyd was. I'd never heard of her, never seen any of her films. And so, after being so impressed by her performance, I, went online and decided to check out her filmography. And that was where I found out that, unfortunately, she never went on to have this big Hollywood career, all thanks to some long-term mental illness. It really is sad that health issues, got in the way, because honestly, she showed so much potential here. It's an award-worthy performance, and just kind of sad to find that out, that she never went on to bigger and better things. As for Bruce Willis, he was equally impressive, delivering one of the most underrated performances I've ever seen. He played Emmett Smith, a jaded war veteran who was unable to cope with what had happened to him in the Vietnam War. And just from the body language, the slouched shoulders to the wide-eyed stares, it was pretty clear that Emmett was emotionally checked out. Now, while I thought Bruce Willis was brilliant throughout the whole film, his best scene was towards the very end when we saw him emotionally break down in the woods. This was the first time that he finally acknowledged his pain, and we found out the root cause of what it was. And it was down to the fact that Emmett felt guilty for surviving. His war buddies, the people he was close to, they perished, they died. And that was something that just was a massive burden for Emmett. He really couldn't get over the fact that he was the one that survived. Like, well, why him? Why was he the lucky one? In that moment, you really felt Emmett's pain. What he was going through, the despair, the anxiety, the depression. And, Sam was there trying to console him, doing her best. Just a very sad but brilliantly performed scene. I also wanted to quickly mention the actress Joan Allen, who played Sam's mother, Irene. Now, she was a character that wasn't really involved that much in the story. Alan only had, a few scenes, but all things considered, she was very good. What I found really interesting was that Sam was upset at her mother because Irene had never really brought up the dad in conversation. She never really had shared any memories of him. And yeah, that led to some resentment. But ultimately, Irene was a woman that never really knew this guy. She never knew Sam's father because he was deployed very shortly after they got together, and then he died. It wasn't some whirlwind romance. It was kind of over before it ever began. And so that revelation, I thought, added a new kind of dimension to the overall story. Now, it's quite interesting to see that it wasn't Irene, it wasn't the mother that was holding back. She really had nothing to share. And so, dislikes for In Country from 1989. When it comes to the dislikes, there wasn't really anything that jumped out at me in terms of being really negative. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I guess if I was going to pick something, the runtime was a little long, and there were a few scenes here and there that certainly could have been either trimmed or outright removed. Now, this movie was based on a book, so of course the filmmakers wanted to, try and include everything, into the story. But sometimes that can be detrimental to the overall viewing experience. For example, I wasn't all that keen on Sam's relationship with the mechanic, the older man called Tom, who was played by actor John Terry. Now, there were several scenes of these guys, getting together, hanging out, and look, there wasn't anything necessarily wrong with that. But having kind of watched the film and looking back in retrospect, that stuff, it didn't really add anything new to the story. We'd already seen Sam having this on-off relationship with her boyfriend, Lainey. So yeah, the whole kind of boyfriend relationship and kind of drama, we'd already seen that. I don't think we really needed to see any more of it. But once again, I get it. It is based on a novel. So, the filmmakers are kind of, their hands are tied. And so, ratings for In Country from 1989. I'm going to be rating this movie a 6.9 out of 10. In Country was a heartfelt movie about a young woman just trying to find more information about the dad that she never met. Unlike your traditional war movies, this film focused on how the brutal events of a war can lead to long-term trauma, even for those who are not directly involved. The film suggested that through loving and caring for one another, healing is possible. And that was a really positive message that I think needs to be more present in today's Hollywood landscape. If you've seen In Country, then please let me know your thoughts and memories in the comment section below. For all those out there who haven't seen this one yet, I do recommend it, especially if you are a Bruce Willis fan. He's an actor who's retired. He's no longer doing or making films, and that's a shame. But that being said, if I'm honest, this movie, his performance as Emmett Smith, that's kind of how I want to remember Bruce Willis as an actor. He was that good. And well, that's all from me today, guys. I do hope you've enjoyed this review of In Country from 1989. I'll be back next week, so don't forget, if you haven't, please do consider subscribing. It means a lot. And of course, take care.